Hi, everybody. Welcome to Profiles in Innovation, where we talk to Brandeis innovators who are making a difference on campus and around the world. I'm Christina Inge, and today we are talking to Gianna Everett of InBite, a recent Spark Tank competitor, about her amazing startup that she is working on. Welcome, Gianna.
Hi, nice to meet you, everyone.
So tell me about InBite. It's a great idea. I'll let you tell the audience about it, but it's about breaking down the loneliness epidemic using technology, and it's a great idea. So tell us a little about InBite and tell us how you got the idea for it.
Yeah, to be totally transparent, I actually didn't have the idea for it. My co-founder, Devin Yuan, did. But the idea sparked when he was doing his internship in New York, and he wanted a way to somehow connect with other interns, either through like a meal or like a shared activity, but he didn't know how to approach them properly or didn't want to like seem too forward by asking for their numbers and whatnot. So he wanted some sort of um just like intermediate technological way to try to meet new people. So that was the starting point for InBite. And since then, we've gone through a lot of either MVP iteration or just general talking and testing within the team. And it's kind of morphed into also, well, still like a social meetup app. Focusing now on college campuses, so targeted directly towards either undergraduates and or graduates, but basically, students on campus can specify, oh, I want to meet up for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I want to meet up to study, want to meet up to work out. And there's designated spots on campus. So currently, we're focusing on Brandeis University, but definitely hope to expand to the other Boston schools and then go from there.
That's awesome. And tell me a little bit about what problem this solves. What is the challenge? Obviously, we know that loneliness is a big problem on college campuses and society wide, but how does it work? Like, let's say a student wants to download InBite or anyone wants to download it. What happens? How does that help you connect with people on your campus?
Well, I think a lot of it is actually, and what we've realized through our testing is that people are more open to meeting people through mutuals. So, some of that stranger to stranger aspects. So, for example, if I were to send out a lunch invitation, and it went out to a total stranger, just out and like one of our user pools, the chances of that pairing actually meeting up are a lot lower compared to those that are trying to grab lunch with their friend, and then a mutual friend comes along, and then they meet someone new, and then it kind of progresses from there. So, kind of emulating why I think a lot of people also came to Brandeis in the first place is that tight knit community, and it's big enough where you don't know everyone, but small enough where you know enough people and you feel that sense of community. So, yeah, meeting through mutuals, I think, is that big determining factor. But especially when we would hope to expand and get into like larger scale schools such as like Boston University or Northeastern. Obviously that scale kind of increases. But with further testing, we'll see.
Awesome. So you're testing it right now, I take it.
Yeah, we released a basically a beta version on the App Store. So we've been kind of testing it within like our own friendship circles, which is kind of where all that mutuals aspect is getting tested. So, there's a lot of overlap within the team and like who's been working with who, but obviously we don't know all of each other's friend groups. And so it's been kind of great meeting up, and it has like the impromptu meetups and study days and whatnot. Like they are effective and they do happen and people show up to them. So it's been rewarding to see that.
That is so awesome. So it sounds like you're already generating some traction, and that's what it's all about in a startup, right? Getting those first few customers, getting that valuable feedback, and getting the support that you need. Um, to that question, I guess my next question is, so you participated in Spark recently, and that is Brandeis's program that helps us support our student innovators and our student startups, as well as our faculty and staff startups. And I was wondering, what was that experience like for you? What was it like being in the Spark program? Was it helpful? And if so, in what way?
Yeah. I think from the business aspect and just the general like pitching and entrepreneurship, which sounds super generic, but from that angle, it was very beneficial to me. So I'm a computer science major and physics minor, and in the future, I would like to either get an MBA, hopefully on my company's dollar, um, but and explore more of that business side because it's what makes the world go around. And so learning more about those entrepreneurship and like marketing focused techniques, especially towards the end. And we had a pitch at the like the Spark Tank, 5-minute pitches. That part was extremely beneficial. And so sometimes, when we're preparing for other pitches or just referring back to, how could we best, fix like our business model or what that would even look like in the future, considering how the direction of the app develops. I still refer back to those slides just to get a refresher on what could or could not work.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you say you refer back to those slides. Is there anything that strikes you as particularly useful in terms of learning how to do your startup or stuff that has been particularly useful to you in this phase where you're out there testing?
I think in terms of like because we are, doing word of mouth to like potential users, but also, trying to figure out like what other startup pitches and whatnot we could do. I think the example slides highlighting, I think it was like 10-page slide deck highlighting, what type of story do you want to tell to the investors or whatnot. And I think that that part is probably the most important because I think as mentioned in Spark Tank and what we as the team have also heard is that it's great if you have the product, but if you can't sell it properly, then it's not going to go anywhere. So, getting a strong basis on that story has been very important.
That's great to hear. What was it like building a team and working on your startup on campus, kind of connecting with other people within your team and throughout the program? Was it helpful to have that kind of have that support and mentorship? And tell me a little bit about how that worked.
Are you, I guess, like within the context of Spark Tank, like with the other teams, or?
Oh, or within the context of Spark in general, like what was it like? What was it like working with others versus working on it solo?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think like going to like the weekly meetings for I think around, 10 weeks straight, was really interesting just because, that there were a lot of other startup ideas out there that, people were still doing on campus that you just don't really hear about because, they're out busy, trying to get their own legs and whatnot. So I think that hearing from the teams like that, and then I think especially towards the end when we were preparing, hearing their feedback on how the presentations um would go and whatnot was also beneficial. But I guess like within my team, the team itself, like seeing like at least when we would all show up, seeing them show up to the weekly meetings and seeing them outside of working on the startup was also a nice shift in focus since usually when we do meet it is about like MVP iteration or like coding development and whatnot, and this gave us a chance to kind of focus on something else at business related that is still important.
That's awesome. It sounds like you did a lot in a short amount of time. Um, which is kind of the one of the things that's great about Spark is that you get to do a lot. But now you're out there, you're working on your startup. What are some of the things you're learning about running a startup that have surprised you?
I think, well, I mean, I've heard about it from like prior classes I've taken before, like a software entrepreneurship class or like my human computer interaction class. But the user interface and constant iteration are pretty important. So, especially, with our software focused startup as is, once you get kind of like all of the nuts and bolts working and like the data is kind of processing, the accounts are being made and people can log in, it's all about, how users are actually interacting with the app and, if our intention and ease of access of meeting new mutuals and new people is actually effective or not. So, we've been trying out even something as basic as like changing a color has, gone through, that type of like user iteration and whatnot. But, also keeping track of like, what's worked on a small scale when testing it with 5 people, and then suddenly you're testing it with 30 people, and suddenly someone can't log into their account, or there's a bug when, someone sends out, so many invites in a day. So, yeah, just the constant iteration.
That is so important though, and it's really where success happens. Speaking of success, you have had a great career here at Northeastern as a student with your multiple majors. What attracted you to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think for me personally, and like I don't want to speak for the rest of the team as well, but we all come from, different academic backgrounds. So once again, I think that computer science background and then blending it with first of all, just an interesting side project where I could kind of either provide technical input or, work on the technical side, coupled with that business aspect, since I think that type of like well-rounded development is like, especially in the workplace, is beneficial. And so the best way to learn something is from doing it yourself. And so having some sort of business oriented or entrepreneurship based program to kind of get into like the nuts and bolts of like, what would be most viable for yourself, what would be most viable for the business, I think is most beneficial. But for the rest of the team, at least, um, at least in like the core three of us, one of them is also a CS major and the other one is a political science major going into law. So, we're all coming from different backgrounds and perspectives, but it's been, not clashing, but interesting to see how they all kind of blend together.
Awesome. Like we all are stronger together, right? What's next for you after graduation? Are you going to continue working on InBite?
Yeah, and that is the plan for me, and especially since I'm one of the oldest in the team, and graduating in May and whatnot. But yeah, no, although I do plan to be going into the workforce, testing the app and, possibly even maybe jumping the gun a little bit on the testing part of it, but maybe meeting some new coworkers or using it within the workplace or within like a new city, if it gets enough traction and if it gets off of the Brandeis University campus, then kind of seeing where things go from there. But I definitely see myself still providing input and user interface development going forward.
Awesome. And if people want to find out more about InBite or they want to be one of the testers, what should they do? Is there a place where they can sign up or get involved, or are you
Currently, yeah, so we do have our Instagram and it is,
okay?
slowly growing. But it's like invite.boss, so short for Boston. And our link to the directions to downloading the beta app is on there. And then in the future, especially with the coming of the fall semester in August 2025, we're really going to be going heavy with the marketing and getting more growing our user base.
Well, that's something we wish you a lot of luck with. And if anybody's listening and they want to get involved by testing it out or meeting new people themselves through InBite, this sounds like a great opportunity to expand your social circle, network, and make friends. What are some thoughts you would like to leave people with if they're thinking themselves about doing a startup, whether they're on campus and a student or whether they're out there in the world who are thinking, I might want to do my own startup. What would your advice to them be?
I think the one that always comes up either in books or classes or everything is that you just have to start it. Um, which sounds a bit redundant since it's a startup, but truly like, just getting some, you know, variation or some product out there, and just taking that idea and running with it. Because I think even, and that's one thing that, we even struggled with in the beginning, is that we got very caught up in the details and trying to create that perfect first product before releasing it or showing it to anyone. But really talking more about your idea, sharing with other people is actually a benefit and not a detriment, since no one's really, because everyone has great ideas, but not everyone's always going to act on them. So even if you, share that idea, doesn't mean someone's going to take it away. So yeah, just starting.
That's two great pieces of advice there. One, just start. That's so important. And the other is share your ideas. Ideas are abundant, it's much more important to get that traction and support from people than keeping your idea secret. Nobody can help you if you're keeping your idea secret, and it's execution that really builds startups. So don't worry that if you share your idea or you market yourself, that it will be stolen, because the marketing is how you build a flourishing product and build that user base. So great points there. Um, Gianna, it's been great to meet with you. This has been a good conversation. Give us that web address one more time for where people can try out InBite.
Yeah, our Instagram account would just be at InBite, INBITE.BOS. So starting in Boston and hopefully growing from there.
Starting in Boston and growing from there, and starting on the Brandeis campus and
Yes.
growing from there already. Thank you so much for being on Profiles in Innovation. It's been a great conversation, and wishing you all the best.
All right. Thank you so much.